Hi guys, so again, as promised, I have here the presentation or PowerPoint presentation of my advice. And again, I will try to present this as if this is my proposal and I'm presenting it in front of the panel members. Okay, so without much further ado, let's start. Okay, good day everyone, my advisor, panel members, our dean, and Dr. Palia, head of the graduate school. Please allow me to present my research proposal entitled Exploring COVID-19 Vaccination Anxiety in the Community and Science Teachers' Role as Information Providers. I'll start with some backgrounder. Although not formally reported as of this time, COVID-19 vaccination anxiety is sweeping across the globe. I mentioned a few instances in the hard copy of this proposal. So you have there Mental Health America, reports of Mental Health America, and from Nigeria to the Southeast Asia, the usual concern always involved issues about vaccine efficiency and safety. In the Philippines, we are all aware of the public opinion and emotional states that contribute to the so-called anxiety. So how can we regulate this? Who needs to get involved? So it's a no-brainer that science teachers must be involved, at least in the community level, when it comes to educating people about COVID-19 vaccination. Because aside from the statement of Secretary Briones on this, it's always public consensus that teachers should perform their primary function as information providers. Again, at least in the community level. But of course, if you want a more formal basis, we all know that community involvement is included in the NCBTS framework for professional teachers. But despite these initial conceptions, the possibility of mitigating COVID-19 vaccination anxiety at the community level by encouraging science teachers to function as reliable information providers is still unclear. So we can actually always get plenty of opposition somewhere else. Some teachers, for example, do not feel that they are needed in the information campaign, especially when they themselves are suffering from anxiety and uncertainty. Now, it's good that at this time, there is no official call on science teachers to act as COVID vaccination information providers. The vaccination program has already started and is projected to take at least 2 to 3 years to complete. Another issue is that anxiety is not guaranteed to stop even after a person is vaccinated. So as a doctor of instructional leadership candidate, I feel the need to investigate this because I am expected to act as an authentic instructional leader, so to speak. So a leader in information delivery that is relevant to the improvement of the society in general. Now let's have a closer look at the epistemological and theoretical research perspective I adopted since, again, I'm proposing a qualitative study. So I want to show you how I treat knowledge and my conception of truth about this phenomenon that I'll be investigating. I adopted the constructivist epistemology because I believe that my respondents here are expected to share their experiences and personal insights about vaccination anxiety. So definitely they will construct the truth. Now the truth will be based on how myself and my respondents perceive and evaluate the phenomenon based on experiences. Now it is only natural for this view of truth and knowledge to continue with the interpretivist approaches. The science teachers and the community members, for example, tend to interpret what they see, what they hear, or experience in general. Vaccination anxiety is an outcome of these interpretations. And whether to participate or not, or to participate, can also be based on the science teacher's interpretation of their role or the risks that may be involved. Now, to be consistent with this perspective, I only have 2 options for my methodology. Of course, I cannot adopt the one of the options, which is symbolic interactionism because, again, this study is not geared towards theory building from scratch. There are already plenty of literature and theories on anxiety. So I think it's only fit to consider phenomenology because I will only explore and try to look for unique meanings based on actual and, let's say, newer experiences of my informants. Now, if there are questions that remain unanswered by my informant's experiences, I can continue with the heuristic inquiry. The researcher herself will immerse with these persistently complex questions and try to answer it by using her own experiences and by synthesizing the information coming from the informants. These are the research questions I will try to answer via this investigation. Number 1, what is the nature of COVID-19 vaccination anxiety at the local community level? 2, how do science teachers see themselves as community leaders in educating the public and reducing COVID-19 vaccination anxiety? Thirdly, what sorts of information are sought by the local community that could make them feel safe and secured about COVID-19 vaccination? 4, what potential approaches can be included in a community intervention program led by teachers, in case we do that, of course, to lessen vaccination anxiety? And 5, what potential challenges are to be expected from involving science teachers in a community program that is geared towards controlling vaccine anxiety? There are preconceived assumptions about the phenomenon at hand. Again, because this is a qualitative study, I use assumptions instead of hypotheses. But I don't need to test whether these assumptions are true or not. It will simply guide my approach later when conducting this study. First, COVID-19 vaccination anxiety is a well-observed phenomenon. It is assumed that everybody has something to say about the vaccine and vaccination, including the risks and how other people respond to it. It is also assumed that majority of the people are afraid of being vaccinated, especially after the DOH has been involved in the Dengvaxia vaccine controversy. And the difference in anxiety levels before and after vaccination can vary among individuals. Thus, it's also assumed that one can still have anxieties after a successful vaccination. So guys, as you can see, these assumptions are important to fine-tune how my investigations will be carried out later. Okay, so let's add additional assumptions in the next slide. Science teachers do not want to involve themselves when it comes to educating the community because they also lack a robust awareness of how vaccines work. Science teachers do not feel that they are the persons in authority who must lead in the decision-making of community members when it comes to programs and interventions related to vaccination or the pandemic in general. And making the teachers participate in information drives can be more of a problem, especially if they have little understanding of what they're going to deliver to the community. So, dear panel members, these opposing views must be given consideration later because, again, these were initially assumed. Now I will try to convince you how this investigation can be useful to a variety of stakeholders. First, to teachers. Now, not only science teachers, but all the teachers in general will gain a decent understanding of COVID-19 vaccination. After, of course, the science teachers are information equipped and allowed to educate their non-science peers. This can give teachers the necessary confidence and morale as resource persons. To students, the more the science teacher knows, the more aware their students become about vaccination. They can also bring information to their homes and directly pass it to their parents and relatives. Depression has also been a concern among the young generation today, and partly it can be triggered by the anxiety brought about by the pandemic. This study can contribute to understanding student problems and inform future studies that can improve their situation. Of course, for the parents, as one of the primary stakeholders of the community and, of course, pillars of the family, parents are the most anxious during this pandemic. Lessening the vaccination scare can really be a distressing activity. So just like the students, they too can transmit information and help the community deal with vaccination anxiety. Next, we have curriculum designers. Education authorities from DepEd and CHED will find the results of this study very valuable. Information drives about vaccines and the advantages of being vaccinated can be included in the curriculum. So they will be able to make focused interventions because the phenomenon has been fully established and characterized at the ground level. Future researchers. The field of educational psychology will surely gain a lot from studies where teachers are assisting mental health programs. Vaccination anxiety is a hot topic at this time, and a lot of unique insights and research possibilities can be extracted from the results of this study. And lastly, the government can also benefit from this because if vaccination anxiety can be controlled with the help of science teachers, the national COVID-19 vaccination program is also expected to push through with lesser hurdles. This study can improve the chance of a successful vaccination program. Here are some essential information from my Chapter 2. I only extracted the primary citations that is relevant to my study. In 2014, WHO defined the term vaccine hesitancy, with safety being the biggest concern. Vaccine hesitancy is a multifaceted phenomenon that entails the existence of cognitive, psychological, socio-demographical, and cultural factors. An attitude of hesitancy differs from an action of vaccine refusal because even those who are vaccinated can still harbor anxiety towards certain aspects of vaccination. There is a regional variability in perceiving the safety and effectiveness of vaccination. For example, higher income regions were the least concerned about perceived safety and effectiveness of vaccines. Now, as the consequences of the disease becomes unknown to people, it becomes challenging to explain the desirability of vaccination. Claims that the pandemic response may have been improperly influenced by commercial interests coincided with evidence of increasingly hesitant attitudes to vaccination. In several studies, social media was associated with fears in context of the COVID-19 pandemic and also with vaccine hesitancy and related conspiracy theories. So it is useful to detangle different types of fears and anxiety with regard to vaccine acceptance. Right, guys? So finally, I am in the most important section of this presentation, the methodology. So let's have the methodological perspective first. As mentioned a while ago, this is categorized as phenomenological research. Now, it will rely on the experiences and insights of the local community members and science teachers to be able to create a holistic picture of vaccination anxiety. These also include their overall consensus of how this can be resolved after re-examining science teachers' roles as information providers. Some persistent unanswered questions will be answered via heuristic inquiry by the researcher herself. Okay, context of the study. The study will recruit various representatives from broadly defined adult age groups. So, for example, 19 to 35 are categorized as young, 36 to 55 middle-aged, and 56 up as old. And these respondents will come from the local community from the municipality of Dumangas, Iloilo, Philippines. Then, science teachers from different school levels or also residents of the community will be asked to participate in the study. So at this point, I'm actually planning to get at least 3 informants. But of course, if the 3 are not sufficient to provide answers, I will just recruit additional science teachers. Additional potential informants can be suggested by the panel members, of course, after this. Now, for the data gathering instrument, I'll use an interview guide consisting of core questions. These core questions resemble the initial research questions. Of course, interviews will be unstructured to maintain the assumption that every experience and insights of the informants are unique and not influenced by the researcher. So the guide will ensure that the interview stays within the planned investigation. And to triangulate the interviews, focused group discussion will be done by inviting additional informants who will discuss the findings provided by the individual interviews. So it's like getting a separate team to discuss the initial findings with the primary informants. Now again, if face-to-face interviews and discussions are not possible, it can still be done virtually via Zoom or Google Meet. Now, qualitative data will be analyzed again using the NCT framework by Seidel, or the Noticing, Collecting, and Thinking framework. And for my ethical considerations for this study, all in all, I will just look at or consider anonymity and informed consent. So this will be made clear to all participants of the study, and the researcher will ensure that there will be no conflicts of interest that can affect, for example, cultural groups and other entities. I already have a sample informed consent form that I will adopt, or maybe I will just get consent directly from the respondents during the actual recording of the interviews. So again, I hope that I have explained well my proposal. So thank you very much for listening.